Whose face do you see in the mirror? Imagine glancing at your reflection and spotting the unmistakable eyes of a movie idol who never acknowledged you because a $1 million studio contract demanded silence. From glittering premieres to maternity wards locked under aliases, classic Hollywood perfected the art of erasing proof of passion. Tonight, we rewind the reels and expose 12 children whose very births threatened to topple golden reputations. No sermons, just the hidden frames the studios spliced out. Judy Lewis. She arrived in November 1935 inside a Catholic charity hospital, while her mother, Loretta Young, was supposedly recuperating from exhaustion in Palm Springs. In reality, Young was secretly delivering the daughter conceived with Clark Gable during the filming of Call of the Wild in the remote Yukon. The Catholic actress, terrified of scandal and career suicide, entrusted her secret to a handful of confidants and the studio's damage control experts. Her daughter, bearing Gable's unmistakable ears, became Hollywood's most elaborate open secret. Studio publicity carefully arranged Young's convalescence. 8 months later, she adopted the same baby from a Catholic orphanage and presented her to the press in a convenient sunbonnet that hid those telltale Gable ears. The ruse was elaborate. Young reportedly toured orphanages before selecting her biological daughter, creating a paper trail of charitable consideration before bringing home the child who had never truly left her circle of care. Clark Gable, still wed to Rhea Langham and cultivating his rugged leading man persona, maintained a careful distance. He met Judy exactly once as a child, offering only a polite pat on the shoulder before retreating behind contract lawyers and carefully worded press statements. Judy grew up with luxuries and opportunities, but also nagging questions. The orphanage story never quite added up, and Hollywood whispers followed her through schoolyards. The truth finally emerged when Judy was 31 and preparing for her own wedding. Confronting Young before the ceremony, she watched her mother dissolve into tears of shame and regret, not for the conception, but for the decades of deception. Young eventually signed off on Judy's 1994 memoir Uncommon Knowledge, though she remained reluctant to discuss the matter publicly. Only after Young's death in 2000 did her authorized biographer confirm everything, closing the chapter on one of Hollywood's longest-running and most elaborate cover-ups, a secret that lasted 65 years from conception to final confirmation. Michael Lindsey Hog. The opening line here is a whisper from Irish actress Geraldine Fitzgerald to her young son. "Your father likes to watch you play from the next garden." For decades, this cryptic euphemism was all Michael Lindsey Hog knew of his potential paternity. Officially, he was the son of British aristocrat Sir Edward Lindsey Hog, but the rumors, and his own resemblance to a certain cinematic genius, suggested something different. Throughout his childhood in the 1940s and 50s, Michael found himself coincidentally invited to play at homes where Orson Welles happened to be visiting, creating chance encounters that seemed suspiciously well choreographed. The bizarre arrangement allowed Fitzgerald to maintain her reputation while letting her little boy toddler through a garden hedge to visit Welles's own daughter, half-sister, Christopher. These staged, accidental meetings formed a surreal backdrop to Michael's youth, as he developed his own artistic sensibilities that would later flourish when he directed pioneering music videos for the Beatles and the Rolling Stones. The family secret hovered like cigarette smoke in well-appointed drawing rooms, acknowledged only through sidelong glances and uncomfortable silences. As an adult, Lindsey Hog finally demanded answers from his aging mother. The conversation was frustratingly inconclusive, full of evasions and half-admissions that only deepened the mystery. It took Gloria Vanderbilt, that connoisseur of high society gossip, to produce the smoking gun. She confirmed to Lindsey Hog that his mother and Welles had indeed conducted a passionate affair during exactly the right time frame. A 2010 DNA test proved frustratingly ambiguous, failing to definitively prove or disprove the connection. Yet Michael has come to accept the familial resemblance and the circumstantial evidence more than any lab result. The similarities, physical, temperamental, and artistic, speak louder than genetics. His 2011 memoir, Luck and Circumstance, walks the delicate line of acknowledging Wells as his biological father without definitively claiming it as scientific fact. A fitting ambiguity for a child of Hollywood's most brilliant illusionist. Tina Sinatra. This vignette kicks off in a Madrid hotel corridor, 1948. Frank Sinatra, still married to first wife Nancy Barbado, slips from nightclub to film set to Ava Gardner's apartment with the desperate enthusiasm of a man pursued by both paparazzi and his own demons. A Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer chaperone is posted outside the door, ostensibly to protect Gardner's reputation, but in reality, to monitor the increasingly uncontrollable situation developing between two of Hollywood's most valuable and volatile assets. Their affair burned white-hot in European hotel rooms and on Spanish film locations, far from American gossip columnists, but never entirely beyond their reach. When Gardner discovered her pregnancy, studio fixers swung into action with practiced efficiency. Arrangements were made for a private birth in London, under an assumed name, covered by the convenient fiction of production delays on Gardner's latest film. 9 months later, Christina, Tina, Sinatra, was registered under a code name in a discreet London clinic, while Ava resumed filming with barely a pause in her schedule. The baby was quickly transported to America and integrated into Frank's household with Nancy, presented to the world as their youngest daughter. This arrangement allowed the affair to continue while maintaining plausible deniability about the timing and circumstances of the child's birth. Frank bankrolled schooling and silence. Tina's half-siblings, Nancy Jr. and Frank Jr., didn't learn the full timeline until the 1980s, when family secrets began unraveling in the face of memoirs and unauthorized biographies. While Nancy Sinatra Sr. maintained dignified silence on the matter until her death, insiders noted her particular coldness toward Tina compared to her acknowledged children, the subtle tell of a woman who had accepted her husband's affair but could never fully embrace its living consequence. Tina grew up in the shadow of dual icons, a father whose voice defined American popular music and a biological mother whose face epitomized Hollywood glamour, yet belonged fully to neither's acknowledged legacy, a testament to the complicated emotional math of blended families born of scandal rather than choice. Eric Preminger, burlesque queen Gypsy Rose Lee, was married to actor Alexander Kirkland when she became pregnant in late 1944. But the baby belonged to already married Austrian director Otto Preminger. The pregnancy presented a double scandal, adultery on both sides, and the particularly thorny reality that Preminger was establishing himself as a mainstream Hollywood director who couldn't afford association with the risque world of burlesque. Gypsy, herself navigating the delicate transition from striptease artist to legitimate actress and author, faced her own professional risks. Unlike many women in similar situations, Gypsy refused Preminger's hush money, believing the life growing inside her deserved better than to be treated as an inconvenient secret. She chose instead a private delivery and the convenient fiction that Eric was Kirkland's heir. The subsequent divorce left Gypsy raising the boy largely alone, supplementing income from her memoirs and occasional performances with careful money management. Young Eric grew up in a fascinating but confusing world, surrounded by his mother's flamboyant friends and the intellectual circles she cultivated as she reinvented herself. Though Preminger maintained a distant financial interest in the boy's welfare, he remained officially unacknowledged. A phantom father whose films Eric watched in theaters without being allowed to claim connection. The ruse maintained for decades, until Eric's own 1969 memoir blew the carefully constructed narrative apart. The revelation coincided with changing social attitudes that made illegitimacy less scandalous, and with Preminger's own evolution from ambitious young director to established industry power player who no longer feared such associations. During a Paris press tour for his epic film Exodus, Preminger finally embraced Eric publicly as his son. The reconciliation came late, but proved genuine. Eric eventually changed his surname to Preminger, acknowledging both bloodlines, the audacious creativity of his burlesque queen mother, and the stern perfectionism of his director father. Their story represents one of Hollywood's rare, secret child narratives, with something approaching a happy ending. A family reunited after decades of separation imposed by the rigid moral expectations of an earlier era. Patricia Van Cleave Lake. William Randolph Hearst, the newspaper magnate who controlled much of America's media and bankrolled Hollywood gossip columns, proved masterful at burying his own headline. A daughter conceived in 1919 with his longtime mistress, actress Marion Davies. The man who built San Simeon, that monument to excess and control, arranged his secret with customary thoroughness, installing the infant Patricia in his sister-in-law's household and creating an elaborate cover story about the child being Davies' niece. The arrangement afforded Patricia a life of extraordinary privilege without acknowledgement. She grew up attending the legendary parties at San Simeon, watching her biological parents host presidents and movie stars, while maintaining the fiction of being merely an extended family member. The girl everyone referred to as Marion's niece attended the finest schools, dressed in couture funded from Hurst's accounts, and moved through high society with the confident ease that comes from knowing one belongs, even if the official story says otherwise. On her 1937 wedding day, Hurst slipped Patricia a private blessing and a substantial financial gift, the closest he ever came to publicly acknowledging their true relationship. The moment passed quickly, obscured by celebration and champagne, but remained Patricia's most treasured memory of the man who could only be her father behind closed doors. For decades after both parents' deaths, she maintained their fiction, protecting the Hurst and Davies legacies, as she had been raised to do. Only in 1993, on her own deathbed at age 74, did Patricia finally sign an obituary draft that named her parents outright. The document, published after her passing, sent ripples through Hollywood historical circles, confirming what many had long suspected but couldn't prove. Her final act of both loyalty and truth-telling closed a chapter that had begun in the Roaring '20s, when a media titan and his actress mistress created a life they cherished but couldn't claim. A secret sustained for 3/4 of a century by wealth, power, and the peculiar discretion of a bygone era. James Lamar Loder, the glamorous inventor of frequency-hopping spread-spectrum technology, a brilliant innovation later crucial to Bluetooth and Wi-Fi development, proved equally ingenious at manipulating bureaucratic systems. Hedy Lamar, the Austrian émigré whose beauty captivated Hollywood, while her intellect remained largely unacknowledged, bore James in 1939 while single, a potentially career-ending scandal for MGM's exotic leading lady. Facing studio pressure and social ostracism, Lamar devised an elegant solution that showcased her problem-solving talents. When she married screenwriter Gene Markey, shortly after James's birth, she orchestrated a Byzantine legal maneuver. She formally adopted her biological son as though he were not her own. The paperwork created a plausible timeline, a childless bride and groom, charitably taking in an orphan, rather than a single mother bringing her illegitimate child into a new marriage. The arrangement unraveled when the Markey union collapsed after just 1 year. During her subsequent marriage to actor John Loder, Lamar adopted James a second time to square the legal timelines and provide him stable parentage. This double adoption strategy, essentially adopting her own child twice, represented a masterclass in navigating 1940s legal systems to protect both her career and her child. Throughout James's childhood, Hollywood whispers followed the family, but Lamar maintained the fiction with the same determination she applied to her scientific pursuits. The boy grew up amid contrasting realities: official paperwork that declared him twice adopted, yet a physical resemblance to his mother that couldn't be disguised by any legal document. Only after Lamar's death did researchers uncover an original birth certificate proving James had always been hers, the final evidence confirming what many had suspected. The document revealed a woman who had outmaneuvered the studio system's moral constraints through sheer intellectual creativity, protecting her child while preserving her career through a paper fiction that held for decades, perhaps her most elegant invention of all. Algra Houston. In 1964, legendary director John Huston orchestrated one final scene that wouldn't appear in any of his films. He asked ballerina Enrica, Ricky Soma, still legally married to his friend John Vivian, to step aside for a quiet hospital discharge when their daughter was born in London. That daughter, Algra, represented a complicated new addition to Houston's already complex family tree, which included children from multiple marriages scattered across continents. The infant was sent to Ireland, where Houston maintained a rambling estate called St. Clarence. There, Algra was raised alongside half-siblings Angelica and Tony in an unconventional household, marked by their father's extended absences for film projects and his larger-than-life presence when in residence. The family told her a fairy tale about an anonymous English lord who had died tragically, a narrative that explained her existence without complicating relationships with Houston's current wife or endangering Soma's marriage. The arrangement continued even after Ricky Soma's tragic death in a car accident in 1969, leaving 5-year-old Algra effectively orphaned of both her fictional father and her actual mother. She was shuffled between relatives and boarding schools, her heritage remaining a carefully guarded secret. John Huston maintained financial support and occasional avuncular visits, but never acknowledged their true relationship during her childhood. Years later, while exploring her late mother's possessions at Houston's Mexican ranch, Algra discovered a file folder containing correspondence that finally revealed the truth of her parentage. The revelation unfolded gradually, as various family members confirmed what the document suggested. Angelica, by then an Oscar-winning actress herself, embraced Algra fully as a sister rather than a cousin. Algra eventually turned the extraordinary tale into her 2008 memoir Love Child, chronicling her journey from unwitting secret to acknowledged family member. Her story illustrates how even Hollywood's most brilliant storytellers sometimes created narratives in real life that proved too complicated to maintain. Fictions that inevitably unraveled as children grew old enough to question the tales they'd been told about themselves. Carol Ann Barry. Thunder cracks on Hollywood Boulevard, 1943. 23-year-old actress Joan Barry pushes a pram into municipal court, accusing 54-year-old Charlie Chaplin, already thrice married, of fathering her red-haired daughter. The scene could have been choreographed by Chaplin himself for maximum dramatic effect, but this was no film. It was the beginning of a legal battle that would reshape California paternity law and permanently tarnish the little tramp's already complicated public image. The case quickly turned into a scientific showdown. 3 separate blood tests performed by independent laboratories screamed impossible. Chaplin's type O blood and Barry's type A could not possibly have produced a child with type B. Modern genetics confirms this conclusion, but California law in 1943 remarkably barred such scientific evidence from testimony. The jury was legally prohibited from hearing the most conclusive evidence of Chaplin's innocence. Instead, proceedings devolved into character assassination. Prosecutors painted Chaplin as an aging lecher with a predilection for young actresses, while Barry's instability, she had been arrested for breaking into Chaplin's home, was minimized. The tabloids feasted on every sordid detail. After a trial that captivated the nation, the jury, dazzled more by tabloid narratives than by the inadmissible science, ruled Chaplin liable for child support until Carol Ann's 21st birthday. The verdict's fallout extended far beyond Chaplin's checkbook and reputation. The clear miscarriage of justice forced Sacramento lawmakers to pass the 1953 Uniform Blood Test Act, finally admitting modern genetics into California courtrooms. Carol Ann's true paternity remains biologically uncertain to this day. Chaplin never met her again after the trial. But every law school casebook still cites the girl whose contested bloodline changed the rules of evidence nationwide. The case represented more than just another Hollywood scandal. It marked the collision between evolving scientific understanding and an entertainment industry still governed by image and innuendo. A legal precedent born from a moment when America's hunger for celebrity gossip overwhelmed its commitment to scientific truth. Nina Brando. Fast forward to 1989. Marlon Brando is 65, semi-reclusive in his cluttered Mulholland Drive estate. His legendary status secured, but his public appearances increasingly rare and erratic. Behind the gates, a domestic drama unfolds when his housekeeper, Maria Cristina Ruiz, 31, gives birth to daughter Nina, the first of 3 children she would bear with the aging actor over 5 years. The timing couldn't have been more complicated. Brando was simultaneously battling the media frenzy surrounding his son Christian's murder trial and struggling with his own health problems. The last thing his legal team wanted was another headline-grabbing family complication. Elaborate confidentiality agreements were quickly drafted. Ruiz signed papers that prohibited her from discussing the relationship or the children's paternity in exchange for financial security. While Nina and her brothers Miles and Timothy grew up on Brando's property, they remained largely invisible to the outside world. Even Brando's extensive New Yorker profile in 2001, meant to be definitive, relegated them to a mere footnote, acknowledging their existence without details. The children grew up in a strange limbo, materially provided for, but officially unacknowledged, raised within shouting distance of their father, yet separated by both his reclusiveness and the legal barriers he had erected. The arrangement held until Brando's death in 2004, when Ruiz finally broke the NDA by filing claims in probate court. Legal proceedings revealed trust funds Brando had established for the children and, more significantly, discovered paternity acknowledgement documents the actor had signed and hidden inside a locked drawer in his study. Papers that confirmed what he had never publicly stated. Nina's story represents Hollywood's secret children tradition continuing into the modern era, when even an icon like Brando, who had redefined screen masculinity and broken countless taboos, still felt compelled to compartmentalize parts of his family life. The secrecy wasn't motivated by career preservation or studio pressure as in earlier eras, but by a deeply private man's desire to control his increasingly uncontrollable legacy, a strategy that ultimately unraveled in probate court. David Jansen. The pilot episode begins with a Ziegfeld showgirl, Bernice Jansen, who listed no father on her son David's 1931 birth certificate. Hollywood's rumor mill, always hungry for connections between beautiful young dancers and powerful men, quickly filled the blank space with Clark Gable's name. The whispers gained credibility as young David grew, developing the same distinctive jug-handle ears and charismatic grin that had made Gable a marquee idol. The timing aligned perfectly with Gable's pre-stardom years. He was working steadily, but hadn't yet achieved the fame that would come with It Happened One Night and Gone with the Wind. The rugged actor was between marriages, and frequently seen at the theaters where Bernice performed. While Gable would face numerous paternity claims throughout his career, he maintained particular silence regarding David Jansen. As David grew into his own successful acting career, starring in television hits like The Fugitive, Hollywood veterans noted the uncanny similarities, not just physical attributes, but mannerisms, vocal patterns, and a similarly smoldering screen presence. Comedian and impressionist Will Jordan later recounted watching the grown TV star stare, mesmerized, at a Gable impersonator at a Hollywood event, as if studying his own reflection in a living mirror. Actress Debbie Reynolds, a close friend of Jansen's, wrote in her memoir that David privately believed the rumors about his parentage, though he never pursued confirmation through legal channels. Unlike many similar Hollywood parentage whispers, this one persisted because both men avoided definitive denials. Gable, who aggressively countered other paternity suits with legal action, never filed against those spreading the Jansen rumor. David himself maintained a cryptic silence on the matter throughout his life. The mystery followed Jansen to his grave in 1980, an unresolved subplot in Hollywood lore that neither confirmed nor conclusively disproved. In the absence of modern DNA testing, the resemblance and circumstances created one of Hollywood's most enduring paternity mysteries, a question mark that outlived both the rumored father and the potential son, leaving only photographs for speculation. Princess Yasmin Aakhan. Our final reel spins across the Atlantic to the Riviera in 1948. Rita Hayworth, mid-divorce from Orson Welles and at the peak of her fame after Gilda, kindled a whirlwind romance with Playboy Prince Aakhan, a renowned horseman and diplomat still legally married to British aristocrat Joan Yard-Buller. Their affair scandalized multiple continents simultaneously: Hollywood, European aristocracy, and the Muslim world, all watched in collective shock. Tabloids dubbed Hayworth the most glamorous homewrecker on earth, as the couple flaunted their relationship at fashionable resorts and racetracks. When daughter Yasmin arrived in December 1949, a Vatican newspaper thundered that Hollywood had seduced Islam's nobility. The infant represented an unprecedented cultural crossover. The daughter of America's most famous pinup girl and a Muslim prince, heir to the spiritual leadership of millions of Ismaili Muslims worldwide. The marriage collapsed after just 4 years, unable to reconcile Hayworth's Hollywood career with the prince's royal obligations. A bitter custody battle ensued, with Khan offering an unprecedented $1 million trust fund if Hayworth would raise Yasmin as a Muslim. The actress refused, insisting on raising her daughter as a Christian American citizen, a decision that generated international diplomatic tensions and thousands of outraged letters from the prince's religious followers. Yasmin's dual celebrity, Columbia Pictures royalty, and actual Islamic royalty, made her a living emblem of post-war globalization, a child with feet planted in seemingly irreconcilable worlds. As she matured, Yasmin watched her mother's mental health deteriorate from undiagnosed Alzheimer's disease, ultimately dedicating her adult life to Alzheimer's research and advocacy. Her mother's medical crusade eventually eclipsed the scandal of her birth. Yet Yasmin's story remains a Rosetta Stone moment in celebrity history, the point where Hollywood gossip intersected with Cold War geopolitics and religious leadership. Her birth certificate connects disparate worlds: the artifice of studio system glamour, the ancient lineages of Islamic spiritual authority, and the emerging jet-set culture that would redefine celebrity in the second half of the 20th century. The last reel has snapped, and the screen has gone white, but Hollywood's untold negatives are still stacked floor to ceiling in the vaults. If another whispered surname or half-hidden birth certificate crosses your path, drop it in the comments and keep the projector rolling with us. Hit subscribe, stamp a like on the canister, and cue up the next mystery. Because in this theater, the credits are never the end, only the pause before someone yells, "Roll sound." Scene 13, Secret Take.